So we're going to start at the developer console, and we're going to create a new Git. We're going to import the project from Git. Here we select the project, the context. That's one of the folders because this GitHub project has many different projects inside. I'm going to select an application name, store app, and a name here, QR code. And of course, I'm going to deploy this as a Knative service. But here's the interesting part. I'm going to select to add a pipeline. So see that the pipeline comes out of the box. That's going to create a Tekton pipeline. You're going to see that in a bit. So with this import, the application is already being created. There is a build running behind the scenes. But let's take a look at the pipeline now. So QR code, that's the pipeline, the application that I just imported. You see the 3 steps. Again, inside each step, you see what it does, generate and build, and then effectively the KN service create. Now, I'm going to edit the pipeline to change a couple things. Again, you can do that using the pipeline builder. You can use, of course, the YAML as an option as well. We're going to use this extensively during this session today. You see some of the details here of the pipeline. But one interesting thing that we have added recently is an extension to VS Code, and you're going to see that right now. So I have that installed in my VS Code. And one thing you can do is just hit refresh. Oops, I have to log in first. Okay, so let me copy the URL here, the token for this OpenShift cluster. Now we're going to paste. Good. Okay, now I have authenticated. Let me switch to the right project. Tech ready. Excellent. Good. So now I can refresh the list of pipelines. You see the 2 pipelines I had before. I can open the pipeline itself, and then you can see the YAML for the pipeline. And this is a nice way. Again, you can edit the pipeline using the VS Code. There's a built-in visualization thing here that we're going to show you in a bit as well. For now, let's transition to the GitHub project and take a quick look at the pipeline params. So right now you have, again, the basic stuff, just the name of the application, the context, the GitHub project, the branch. But if I hit start, I can trigger that manually, which is one way to do it. Oops, I have to create a PVC. Let's transition to the admin console. Let's create a new persistent volume claim. This is what's going to be used for the workspace to store and share either files or data between the steps of the pipeline. So there you go. That's the name of the PVC I created here for the test, for the demo. Pipeline output. Let's transition, go back to pipelines. Oops, there you go. QR code and pipeline run, start, select the workspace. Again, PVC, there you go. The name of the pipeline is already there. The name of the PVC actually is already there. I can hit start, and that's it. The pipeline that we got created for us during the import flow from Git is already working, and you can see the logs from here. But let me show you another interesting thing. Again, you can also take a look at the logs from the terminal, right, from the CLI. So TKN is the CLI for pipelines. You can do TKN pipeline run logs, and you can tail that just like you would do a tail -f on a file. So you can follow along the output of the tasks of the pipeline. So for example, right now it's performing the clone. There you go. And while that's happening, we're going to do a couple different things with our Knative service that was already created. So you see here that there is already a revision. In a minute, there you go. There is now one URL for the service, but what we're going to do now here is we're going to update the service, and we're going to tag a particular revision And the reason we're going to do that is to generate a unique URL for that particular revision, right? Otherwise, you have just one URL, the main URL for your API, for your service. There you go. The tag was done. Let me show you in a bit. There you go. Good. So you see here, the tag is there. 100% of the traffic is going to this revision. It's the only revision I have. All good there. So now we're going to follow along with the build. So the build is still ongoing. And this is the very first build on this namespace. Again, I created a fresh namespace for this demo, so it may take a while. The subsequent builds are going to be much faster, right? But I'm not going to speed up this too much so that you can get the experience, end-to-end experience as it should be. So let me show you what the application does. So when you hit the URL, this is going to generate a QR code. Again, it's a trend now, I would say, to generate payment systems using QR codes, or even to present menus when you are in a restaurant and you don't want people to touch on a piece of paper or on the menu itself. Like, you can just scan a QR code and get the menu on your cell phone. So again, you can see that if I update the URL, you get a different QR code. All good there. So let's go back to the pipeline, still running. Now it's going to create the service. That's one of the last steps. I think it's the last step of this pipeline. I'm going to create a couple of different versions of this pipeline during this demo. So yep, the service is being replaced. So this is something that we're going to fix as well. But for now, the output of this pipeline is going to replace the service instead of updating the service. And there's a slight difference there, and I'm going to cover that in a bit. But regardless, you're going to get two revisions. So you see the previous revision we have and the brand new revision that we just created out of this pipeline. Let me transition to, yeah, you see now there's a new revision created. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to still tag that old revision. As you see that I lost the tag, and that's because I replaced the service instead of updating the service. But now, because I have two revisions, one thing I can do is, of course, do a traffic split. But I don't want traffic to go to my new revision, and that's one of the things that I'm going to exercise during this demo. So this new revision now will have 0% of the traffic, and the new the old revision, the stable one, still has 100% of the traffic. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm trying to simulate where a case where the new versions, right, the new revisions are just being used as a way to demonstrate that you can have multiple versions of the application running at the same time. So let's look at the pipeline now with more steps. Now we added kn service create, kn tag, and another task to add a command back to GitHub. But we're going to do that through a GitHub webhook, so a trigger. So here I'm adding a trigger, and I'm populating two variables, so a revision and the URL. And you can look at the pipeline template for the actual details here. So let me show you very quickly. Again, you saw the pull request number and the pipeline URL. Those are the two variables that we're adding to our pipeline. And I'm going to reuse those later as part of the pipeline itself. So let me show you where. Again, of course, we need to add the webhook to our project. So I'm going to copy that, and you go into your GitHub project, webhooks. Let's edit this guy here. Awesome. Okay, I'm updating the current app webhook I have. I selected a number of events to send to this webhook, and I have already sent some events in the past. So you see the deliveries there. But anyway, so here I have a couple PRs already open, but I'm going to create a new one. And let's just, for the sake of the exercise, I'm going to edit this file and add a white space. So there you go. I'm gonna add commit change here, so adding white space, and I need to create a new branch because I'm gonna create a new pull request based on this branch. There you go, hit create. So now I have the pull request number 14 created. Let's see what happened now in our pipeline. There you go. Now I have a new pipeline that just got triggered. And like I showed before, again, you can still see the logs from the OpenShift console if you want, or you can monitor that through the CLI. Let's switch. So clean this up. Tail, TKN, there you go, TKN tail. And because I have multiple runs, it's going to pop up the list of runs that I have, and you can pick the one again 40 seconds ago. This is the right one. And now I'm just monitoring the progress of the pipeline from the terminal, just like you were doing before using the CLI. Now let's look at the revisions available for my Knative service. Oops. Okay, list. So I have still my service there. And you see that the latest revision is 13, which it was something that I created before based on the pull request number 13. But remember that for this example, we are using pull request 14. So the pipeline is going to create a new revision, tag it with QR code 13, again, the name of the service and the number of the pull request, but the traffic is still being routed to the previous one, right? To the one with the tag stable. Again, the build is in progress. The build is still ongoing, so let's wait for it. I'm gonna speed up this a little bit through the magic of addition. And there you go. And now the Knative service is being created. So this will update the service and create the new revision, which again is a snapshot with the bits that were part of that particular pull request that we opened against that GitHub project. Apparently now the revision has been already updated. Now it's updating the revision with the tag. Again, remember that we're generating unique URLs for each revision, and we're using tags for that. And the last piece of our pipeline is to update the PR itself with some information stating that the build is complete. So there you go. You can see now the revision is already there. I believe there's a way for me to also list the routes. Probably this is not the right command. But anyway, I'm gonna just show the revisions. Let's take a look at the PR itself. So see if the comment was added. So there it is. The build is complete. So good. So now I automatically triggered this pipeline, and once the pipeline was completed, it updated the PR with information from the pipeline, which is pretty cool. Again, you can see the status of both pipeline runs from the OpenShift console. And let's see here. I think now we can take a quick look at the topology view so you can see all the specific revisions. There you go. This is the QR code 14, again, the name of the application and the number of the PR. So that's the unique URL for this version of the application. The service was scaling down to 0, now it just scaled up. And let's see that you have the QR13 version as well. It's also scaled down to 0, so it's going to come up. See, it's scaling up. And now you have the actual main version. That's the version that everybody hitting the URL will actually access. So without the specifics of the tag. So that's the specific revision that people have access to. And you can see all the 3 revisions with their specific QR codes being used. Now let's get a little bit more fancy. Let's edit the comment that we're gonna add to our PR and see if we can make it more useful than just a message, the build is complete. Maybe we can add the URL for our revision, right? The unique URL that is specific to that pull request. So let's update the code here. So there you go. I'm gonna paste this output. So the preview will be based on the pull request. Wait a minute, let me just fix one minor thing. That's the joy of editing YAML in browser instead of using a proper editor, but that's okay. It's just, instead of pull URL, it should be pull rec. There you go. Okay, save. So now we're gonna trigger this pipeline. So again, the idea here is to create a Netlify-like experience where you have the unique URL for a preview of your change before it actually roll out to production back in your pull request. So again, pull request 14 is here. As you can see, it doesn't have anything specific there other than that the build is complete. We're gonna reopen this one to trigger the pull request again. So close and reopen. That's going to trigger our automated pipeline one more time. And as you remember, you can follow the progress of your pipeline through the CLI or through the OpenShift console. I'm going to stick to the CLI here for now. Again, I see this pull request that just started. Again, you can monitor the progress there. But let's also create another PR, because again, this is going to update an old one. I'll edit the README for this sample because, well, now it's not only about Knative and CamelK, it can also have instructions for Tekton. So, okay, Tekton, good. Adding Tekton to README, create a new branch, propose changes. There you go. Okay, so now I have pull request 15. This is still tracking the build for 14. Again, I'm gonna run both builds in parallel, of course. So I'm gonna reissue. So there you go. I have one that started a minute ago and this one that started 14 seconds ago. That's the PR code 15, PR 15. Not sure I keep saying PR code. And I'm gonna watch the revisions being updated as the build continues. Again, looking at topology while the build is ongoing, right? Just showing you that one thing that you may or may not know is that you can also edit the traffic split for your Knative services using the OpenShift console, right? You can come here and set traffic distribution. Again, the traffic split and the tags, they are all available through this UI. And instead of using the CLI, you can also do that through the UI. Okay, killed some time there while the build is ongoing. So let's see if the build, come on, there you go. Yep, it's moving. Push for the container registry, the internal one, and now we're updating the service. And then you see already in the bottom of the terminal, right, that there is a new revision 15 and there's a tag for the revision 15 already. You see that there is a fourth one here now. But now let's check the pull request, and there you go. There is preview URL for the service is there. So again, you open the PR, it automatically builds, and once the build is complete, it's going to give you a URL for that particular pull request change directly inside your pull request. And one of the beauties of doing this using something like Knative is that when no one is actually using those preview URLs or those preview versions of your application, you're not consuming any resources, right? They're going to automatically scale to 0.